Hey everybody, today's guest is none other than John Feldmann, guitarist and frontman for Goldfinger, as well as a multi-platinum, world-renowned record producer. John and I go way back, and it was a real treat for me to hear his in-depth story behind Goldfinger's breakout single, Here in Your Bedroom, where John was the first time he ever heard the song blasting on K-Rock in Los Angeles, Goldfinger's 1996 Guinness World Record for playing the most shows in 1 year by any band, and the song John's most proud of that he's produced in his career. So stay tuned.
Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes A Podcast.
I have written a song in my life.
Yeah, you've written a couple. So, as my listeners know, my guests, I like to have them pick a song from their career. And John's a little interesting because, as many of you know, John just doesn't play guitar and sing in Goldfinger. John is a multi-platinum, world-renowned record producer. So this literally could have been any song from your career. And I'm really stoked that you picked Here in Your Bedroom, which is, besides Superman, this is like the defining. The other defining Goldfinger song, in my opinion. And a lot of times people are sick of talking about their hits or the fan favorites. And I'm really glad you picked this one because there's a lot to talk about with this. So let's go back to the beginning. So I went back and found your demo, Richter, and because I knew that there was a demo with Here in Your Bedroom, and I wanted to hear it.
You have changed 'cause I still feel the same. Yeah, I still feel the same. I still feel the same. Here in your bedroom.
Besides the production value, it sounded a little more demo-y, but the arrangement was the same. So take me back to that time period. Do you remember writing the song?
Of course, yeah. So I was working on the promenade in Santa Monica at the time. I had been in this funk metal band. So I'd moved to LA when I was 18. And I'd played in bands since I was 12. I was in a punk band in high school. And then I joined this band, the Electric Love Hogs, when I moved to LA. And we got signed. Tommy Lee produced the record. It was just like this amazing experience. And then we got dropped. And it was like I was back to working retail, and so I'd see all these characters. Like I remember seeing Ricky Rackman, who had this radio show in Los Angeles on KNAC, and he was like a friend of mine. He's like, "Oh, are you shopping for shoes here as well?" And I'm like, "What size are you?" Like I had to go from like being a dude in a band to like going back to retail. I was like fucking tail between my legs. It was just awful, And because of that job, though, like I was driven to really kind of get back to my roots, all the music that I kind of grew up on. I grew up on like, the Dead Kennedys and the Buzzcocks and kind of, a lot of poppier, more melodic choruses. And I'm like, you know what? I can't be Al Bundy for the rest of my life. I can't be selling shoes. I've got to do something. I was 25 and I went back to the drawing board and I started writing music, and I think I wrote maybe 4 or 5 Goldfinger songs, and I was still like holding on to this idea. Rage Against the Machine had opened for the Electric Love Hogs, and so I was like, and they started blowing up, and I'm like, maybe I want to do something aggressive. And so I had this demo tape that had one half was these Goldfinger songs I had written, and then the other half was kind of moving forward in that heavier direction. And I sent it to the guy that signed Weezer. And he said, dude, you have to do Goldfinger. This is way more authentic for who you are. You have to pursue this. And so I had like 4 songs written, and this girl that I'd worked with at Nana, this girl, Markia, I just kind of, I don't even remember her last name, but she, I had the biggest crush on this girl, and it was New Year's Eve from 1993 going into 1994. And I wrote, and it finally happened, dude. It was like, I had like the best New Year's Eve of my life up to that point. It was like we finally got together. And New Year's Day of 94, I wrote Here in Your Bedroom in 10 minutes. I just
Oh
wrote it
my.
about the experience of like, I had like this 9-month crush on this girl, and we finally got together, and this song just came out. It was just like, and it definitely came. I mean, the first concert I ever saw when I was a kid was the English Beat. So there's that well, I think Twist and Crawl. I kind of took that drum fill from the
Uh-huh.
beginning of Twist and Crawl. Like it has that English beat, kind of beginning. There's definitely like a mirror in the bathroom vibe, and there is like there are these kind of moments that you connect Here in Your Bedroom and Mirror in the Bathroom, like these kind of like things where you're isolated, you're alone, and me being with that girl, it was just like, I don't know about you, Chris, but a lot of my best songs kind of just come out like they're inspired, they're in the moment, they're from my own real life experience, and they just kind of come out. And that was my experience with Here in Your Bedroom.
Wow, that's that's pretty cool. And some of the best songs just come about like that, like out of nowhere. It's like you pick up the guitar New Year's Day '94, and here's this song. And now, from that moment, when did you record the Richter demo?
So I had, when I got signed, I actually like for a, I think I was 22 when the Love Hogs, the best band name of all time, by the way, got signed. Like I actually did something. I did something smart with it. I bought this 12-track recorder. It used these beta tapes, so I actually had this recording device, and I've been messing around with producing artists even back then. Like there was a band from Venice that was like the Suicidal Tendencies, a protege kind of band called TSS, Toxic Shock Syndrome. They were like full V13, like gangster stuff. They were gnarly. And I remember recording their demo on my 12-track in my rehearsal space. It's classic too, because the rehearsal space that Goldfinger used to rehearse in back in the day was downtown LA, and now that rehearsal space is the Soho House downtown, which is like,
Oh wow.
I mean, it's really come full circle. And I remember like when we were actually rehearsing Here in Your Bedroom, that day, our old drummer Darren Pfeiffer actually like we were on like the 6th floor, and he like just took his pants off, put his ass out the window, and took a crap from the 6th floor. Took a crap from the 6th floor onto the like. I remember we were actually rehearsing Here in Your Bedroom to learn the song, and now it's a Soho House. It's like, what the fuck is happening? You know,
Well,
but
the reason I asked about the demo was because a lot of times the songs will go through variations and change and develop, but the demo is very much the same chord progression, same arrangement.
I've always had a producer engineer brain where like I guess there's the perfectionism in me that like if the hi-hat is, it doesn't have, if it's too loud, or if the kick drum doesn't have like just the right amount of punch or top end to it, like I'm just a tweaker. Like I will just tweak and tweak and tweak. And so I had Here in Your Bedroom in my mind, I had it completely worked out. I had the arrangement, the dynamics, I had every drum fill worked out. I knew everything that I wanted that song to be. So when I showed the band, it was the first song, because as a band, it's like, I'm sure your band is similar. Everyone kind of has their own, that they want to put their own stamp on it. And up to that point, we had probably written 5 or 6 songs together. And for the most part, I had chords worked out for most of the songs, and a melody and a lyric. But this was the first song that I really just kind of like, I was guiding Darren on how to. Darren was in a hardcore band called Zero Tolerance from Buffalo. So he came from like punk rock and hardcore, but he never really, ska wasn't, or ska punk wasn't part of his DNA. And so I was kind of guiding him on the whole kind of steppers thing, and 4 on the
Yeah,
floor, side stick, and that whole thing. So
way different feel.
yeah, it's a completely different feel. And he, And to be honest, I mean, he's a ripping drummer. We had auditioned probably like 4 or 5 drummers before Darren came along. I had Simon and Charlie in the band, and Darren came sort of last. And he's such a fucking solid drummer. And but he really struggled with that first drum fill of Here in Your Bedroom, the da 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 da, that little thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the straightness of it. Like, it's so straight that he really struggled with it, because he had this natural kind of like aggression to his style. And so when we were learning that song, I mean, that was the stuff that I think took the longest, was arranging the drums. And I think when we recorded the demo at the rehearsal space on my 12 track, it was like once he learned it and we actually recorded it for the album, it was a much different experience. But I remember that song was probably the longest song it took us to learn as a band.
Right. So now you're going in to do the record, and it sounds to me, John, like you were already really, especially with Here in Your Bedroom, you were producing. You weren't just the dude in the band playing guitar and singing and writing lyrics. You were producing, at least in your head. You get in to do this record, and where were you in terms of the production chair, sharing that with Jay Rifkin, who has his name as producer on the record?
You know, Jay's he's an interesting cat. You know, he went to college with Hans Zimmer. They were college roommates. And so Hans Zimmer, clearly a talented composer, you know, he just kind of like was right place, right time to a certain extent. And so he became the producer of the Lion King soundtrack, which Hans composed. And so he kind of got his foot in the door at this studio. So I was still selling shoes. And I had, so by the time I was like kind of handing out my demo cassettes, there's a reggae song on there that never got, I forget what it was called, but there's like probably 6 songs on the demo, I think. I could be wrong on that Richter demo that we made. Uh-huh. And this guy, Patrick McDowell, knew me from the Electric Love Hogs, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing now? Like, what's up with your band? I loved your old band." And I gave him this demo cassette. I didn't know a ton of people on the A&R side back then. I gave it to Fat Mike, who I don't think he ever listened to it, but I remember standing outside of Dragonfly when NoFX was playing, and I'm like, dude, I fucking love NoFX. This is my band. And I gave it to him, and I gave it to Patrick, and Patrick like called me back within an hour at the shoe store. He's like, dude, I got to give this to my boss. And he worked for Jay Rifkin. And so Jay, who knew nothing about any of this kind of music, like he had never heard Bad Religion or any bands of this genre. And he was just like, but he heard the songs. He heard Here in Your Bedroom as being like a really well put together song. And so we had a meeting. They made an offer. They offered me, I think it was for like life of the first 3 records, publishing $10,000. And I'm like, holy shit, $10,000. That's more money than I've ever fucking heard of my whole life. And I'm still, I mean, Chris, I'm still dealing with like the fallout of signing this deal as like a 24-year-old, 25-year-old kid. Not like, I didn't trust my lawyer. I just don't want to sell shoes anymore. I just don't want to sell shoes.
Yeah.
And I signed this deal, and it's like, he still owns half the publishing for the first 3 Goldfinger records, which is a challenge because, you know, Tony Hawk is, they're revamping the Pro Skater brand, and they're putting Superman back in it, which Jay fucking still owns. It's crazy. But you know what? I'm grateful. I have to be grateful because there's no other way. I've got to be grateful that I'm not selling shoes anymore. And he was the guy that got me out of that job. And so when we recorded that song in the studio, it was like everyone, I think everyone involved at the time, like my band, Jay, Patrick, all knew that was going to be the single. And so we were really hyper-focused on making sure that track was right. And I remember being in the studio, and Jay would kind of fall asleep around 9. He'd just pass out on the couch. And I would just tweak on the board and just like, what does this knob do? What does this knob do? And I was just so excited to be in the studio, you know? And I remember like this, I don't know if you've heard the song lately, but the snare drum on that song is like there's so much top end, it barely fits in the when you listen to it, like this ping to it.
Yeah, I listened to the track this morning. Yeah, I listened a couple times before we did this, so I know what you mean.
It's like ding, it's like, I mean, we tuned the snare so high. I just wanted to make sure that the snare drum cut. And to be honest, like it sounded at the time when I heard it on the radio, it sounded different than anything else. And I guess maybe there's something to it, whether I love it or hate it today, where I don't like tune snares that high anymore when I make records, but it really did sound different. And it's interesting too, because I didn't really, like you said, I really did produce the record myself. There wasn't really like, Jay was there when they were making the Lion King soundtrack, but like Goldfinger's first record compared to the Lion King's soundtrack, it's a kind of a different, just a different style of music, And so I was really kind of running point with all this stuff. And I didn't really have anyone guiding me on singing. And I was like, when I listen to my voice now, I was forcing this like, this thing that just wasn't natural. And I've found my voice since then. And I love the song, and I'm really, really glad the song did what it did. But like, there's a lot I would have done different.
Oh, well, sure, especially to where you headed in your life as a producer and everything you've learned since then. I mean, I'm assuming this record was recorded in 95 because it came out in 96?
Yes, that's right.
So you weren't using Pro Tools. This was cut to tape.
This was all cut to digital. It was digital 48 track.
Oh my!
So
yeah, okay.
It was on tape, but it was like the first. I mean, because Hans was, already kind of, his career had already taken off. He wasn't top of his game yet, but I mean, his studio was like, I still to this day, I've never been in such a space age studio that Hans owned. So we were able to record in the studio that like had everything. Like I recorded on a 47, which is like the Beatles microphone. And we had like all the best analog gear, like these great preamps, every great compressor made, but we recorded on digital tape. So we had this kind of clarity to the music that was, at the time, I felt like it was we were really lucky to be there, because it wasn't recorded in a computer. So you didn't have the transparency that you have these days with Pro Tools and Ableton and Logic and all that. But we were still able to get this really great performance. But everything was recorded, in one or two takes, because we didn't have the ability to tune a vocal or edit the drums. We had to, Darren played everything one take, because that's how you did things back then, to tape.
Right. Yeah. So, you kind of answered this question a moment ago. So now the record's pretty much done. You're listening to the first real playbacks. You're pushing up the faders to everything, and Here in Your Bedroom comes back and hits you this way out of the speakers in your face. What is the consensus at that point? I mean, it sounds like you kind of already knew this song was special, like first single type material, but that the first real push of the faders, was it exactly what John Feldmann heard in his head that whole time?
100%. But as a producer, at the time, I was just throwing shit at the wall. Like, what does this knob do? Like I said, I had no idea what a master fader was, or what bus compression was. I had no idea about anything. I just was like, fucking, let's just try stuff. And I know a lot more now. So back then, I mean, I was there for every moment. Like, these days, I'm not necessarily, when I make an album, I'm not there for the recording of the shaker sometimes. Back then,
right.
I was like there for every moment. So every step of the way, I was pushing the fade. I mean, I was like making, we mixed the song. This guy, Slam was his nickname. Slam Andrews was the engineer on that record, and he taught me so much, man. When I didn't even know how to work a computer when I started using Pro Tools, I think I used Pro Tools for the first time on Mest's second album, and that must have been like 1999 or 2000. So Slam really helped me tremendously. And so he was there kind of guiding me throughout the whole process. But when the guys came in to hear the first mix, collectively, like any band, Darren wants the drums louder, Charlie wanted the guitars louder, and Simon wanted the bass louder. It's like every band, and so you just basically turn up the volume of the whole mix. And how's this, dude? So
yeah, I'll show them.
It's like, what do you want to do? Everything louder. So I think collectively we all were really happy the first time we heard Here in Your Bedroom. But Going from like a retail job working for like $7 an hour to, being in the recording studio and having, being, I guess, being able to like eat at Taco Bell 3 times a day rather than once. It was like, I felt like that was a massive step, but little did I know how much work, really had to come to kind of put our flag in the sand as far as being a real band, and the next big step for Here in Your Bedroom really was radio, because Jay Mojo Records wasn't really a thing. It was like Jay had come up with the name when he was in college, and he said, if I ever have a record company, it's going to be called Mojo. So we just had this. So we signed to Jay, but Jay, like I found Real Big Fish, like they were opening for the Skeletones in Riverside. And so I know this is off topic for a second, but it kind of connects everything, so once Jay signed Real Big Fish to Mojo, like he sold the company to Universal Records. So we became a subsidiary. And because of that, it helped tremendously, but it also created some roadblocks for us. I remember like we were trying to play Gilman Street, at the time we were like, because I grew up in the Bay Area, and it was like, fuck, I want to play, but they're like, you're on a major label. And I'm like, but we signed to an independent label, but we got, they wouldn't let us play there. It was like this whole fucking thing. And then, but because of Universal, we had a great radio department, I always wanted to be on K-Rock. I grew up on K-Rock. It was like, probably the third or fourth album I ever bought was this Rodney on the Rock compilation when I was like probably 13 years old. And it was like, changed my life forever, hearing all these bands for the first time, Social Distortion and TSOL and all those Southern California punk bands. And so I always wanted to be on K-Rock. When they added us to K-Rock, when Kevin Weatherly added us to K-Rock, he added us 45 times a week, which is like the heaviest rotation you can be in. So I'm in my $100 Dodge Colt, which I bought from my grandma's best friend. Like I've got every, all my Bad Religion and Pennywise and NoFX bumper stickers all over the back of it. And then Here in Your Bedroom comes on K-Rock. And I remember the first time I heard it, I just pulled over on, on Venice Boulevard. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, all the stuff that happened since then, and being able to still, like, you and I toured last year and to still kind of have people come see us, whatever it is, what are we at, like 25 years later or something? Right. Like, of course, all this is amazing. But that moment when I heard Here in Your Bedroom on on K-Rock specifically in Los Angeles, and that was like, K-Rock's heyday. Everybody listened to the radio. Terrestrial radio, it defined everything as far as like alternative music goes, like how to break out. That was like, that was the moment for me. If I can put my finger on one thing that I'm the most grateful for, it was that moment, pulling over, hearing Here in Your Bedroom, with all the radio compression, when you hear your song on the radio and you've got all that extra limiters that they put on.
Sure.
It's so loud in my little shitty fucking car speakers. It was so good.
I gotta say, John, this is so good because you're answering questions that I have. It's perfect, man. It's so cool. Like I was gonna ask, like, when was the first time you heard on the radio? What'd you think? And you're just doing it for me, man. That's awesome. And the feeling that you had to have after, you were selling shoes, you were bummed that the Love Hogs didn't take off. Here you were without a deal, and you hook up with kind of an unlikely team, Jay Rifkin, Mojo. They weren't really proven in the industry. And you go do this record and this happens. You're hearing yourself on K-Rock, which, like you said, was the biggest damn thing in the world in the 90s. If you got played on K-Rock, there was a darn good chance you were going to get added to other stations across the United States.
100%. Kevin Weatherly really defined alternative radio back then. He still is a huge player in the game, of course. It's just back then, everyone just looked to K-Rock for whatever they added. The rest of the radio stations across the country would just immediately add it with, sometimes without even hearing the music. He was such a leader. So I knew that things were going to change. I didn't really have any idea because I'd done little mini tours, and I'd been maybe like to 10, 12 places, touring in my old bands and whatnot. But I had no idea what was laying ahead because because of that moment. And like making the video for that song, Richard and Stephanie from Drive Through Records were really early believers in the band. And they put us on their public access a video show back
Yeah,
in.
Sideshow.
That's right. Yeah. Back in 1994.
Right.
And they were really early champions of the band. And
well, that's how we heard of you was through them. And so let me take you back now. So you did the Richter demo now, and you went to do the record for real. Were you guys playing shows up to that point?
We probably played. Before Mojo, I want to say we probably played 30. I don't know, 30 or 40 shows. I mean, not a ton. I mean, we played, we did a little mini tour with Buck-09. We did, Phoenix and LA, Orange County, San Diego, San Francisco. We did like maybe 7 or 8 shows with the Skeletones. We did like 3 or 4 shows with Blink. But it wasn't like, it wasn't a ton. I mean, we didn't do a full national tour. I mean, we were pretty much local, just playing local shows. I mean, as much as we could.
Right.
And then I was still selling shoes. I had a full-time job. So it wasn't like I couldn't just get in the van for months. We would play, LA on the weekends, just doing little headlining gigs. But, Mojo came along and we made the album, and it was like that's when we started going. So we were kind of learning each other's personalities. I mean, God damn it. It's like, had I known how close, I mean, we played 385 shows in 1996. So I think there's some like Guinness World Records for most shows played in one year that we got, because there were so many opportunities. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't ever want to lose this. I don't ever want to go back to selling shoes. I'm not going to let anyone take this away from me. Anyone.
Yeah.
And so I said yes to every opportunity, everything. So we would play these matinee shows during the day for the radio stations, and then we play like a club show at night, headlining. And had I known that I would be in a van with these like 4 completely different personalities, it was just like. But we made it through. I mean, for the most part. I mean, there were so many fucking fist fights back then, Chris. It was crazy in our band.
Well, you had Darren in the band, so that explains a lot.
And look, I love Darren. He's just he's got a really strong personality, and so do I, and so does Charlie. I mean, all 3 of us are so fucking. We're all very.
Definitely 4 headstrong. You guys were, 3. You guys completely headstrong individuals. I could see butting heads. The reason I had asked the question about playing the shows was, I wanted to ask, because if you were playing shows pre the record, besides the demo you had out, there wasn't anything for people really to go on. So you were doing these shows with Skeletones and Blink and Buck-09. Do you remember prior to the record coming out any reaction to Here in Your Bedroom versus the other songs? Did you notice that like it got a reaction from people that maybe hadn't heard the song, or heard it for the first time?
God, that's such a great question, man. I do remember. I remember we would play. We had a song called "Fuck LA," which was like basically about traffic. It was like this kind of hardcore feel of that song. And that was kind of the crowd favorite. We had another song called Mabel, which was kind of a goofy halftime song. And
which made the first record.
Made the first record. And then we had a couple ska songs, this song called Pictures, a song called Answers, that were just kind of more straight ahead ska punk style. And those ones went over great. But Here in Your Bedroom just never connected the way that it did after it became a song on MTV, on the radio. And at the time, MTV was still like a viable tool to use to market your band. And it was like, we made Richard and Stephanie made such a great video for that song. It's super fun, really colorful. And they got the right kind of, everyone, all the fans in the video were great. and it just like it connected. And I think the energy of that song was kind of unparalleled at the time because we were still kind of coming out of the grunge phase. I mean, Green Day had hit the year prior, and so there was definitely like an energy, but it was like I don't know, the video we made with all those kids in it, it was just so cool. And Here in Your Bedroom just became a song that people knew the lyrics to, where if they heard it for the first time live, opening for Buck '09 in front of an audience that had never heard of Goldfinger and never heard our music, it didn't connect the same way it did once people knew it.
Huh, interesting. So, one last thing about Here in Your Bedroom that I never knew, and God, John, I've seen you guys play that song hundreds of times. I've heard the song so many. I always thought that you had a key change, which you kind of do, but I thought you just completely went to another key for the first time. And this morning, before we got together to do this, I picked up the guitar and I'm like, I'm going to figure out the arrangement here. And I noticed that it's E, B, D, A. And then the chorus goes same progression, but C, G, B, F. And then when it goes back to the verse, it just goes back to E again. But it sounds like there's a key change, which is so friggin' cool, man. Like, I don't know if if you think it's as cool as I think, but it was really neat. It sounds like they're like, holy crap, they completely changed keys, which you did, but you were already there at the beginning of the song. But I never put two and two together that it went back to the same chords at the beginning. I thought it went somewhere completely different, which that's just a cool part of songwriting.
Yeah, there is. I appreciate you noticing all that. I remember Rivers. I grew up in LA with Rivers from Weezer, and he actually noticed the same thing. I remember when he pointed that out. I was, just trying to figure out. I didn't really have that much knowledge as far as how to write music and what formulas work and what don't. But which ironically, the Electric Love Hogs bass player is the bass player in Weezer, which was kind of come full circle. And he so Rivers pointed that out. I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, I love the key change. And there is a key change. And the interesting thing is, like, typically when you write a song, you want the chorus to lift. You want the chorus to be the simplest, most singable part of the song. And usually you want, the melody to kind of go up. You want the melody to hit you as a higher note than the verse. If the verse is typically a lower note than the chorus. And Here in Your Bedroom, when you get
the opposite.
When you get to the second verse, I'm like a fifth above. My range is a fifth above the chorus in the verse, which is like, it just doesn't make any sense when it come back to the I. And it was like, I grew up on all kinds of music, like all of us do. Like anyone that's a musician, like, loves everything. And I fucking love metal. I've always loved metal. Like, and when that last, hi, like I do this James Hetfield thing in my voice where it's just like, I just, I can't help myself. It's just like, I love Metallica so goddamn much. And, but that key change to me was some kind of magical stumbling block that it just felt good. I wrote that song on an acoustic guitar that Jay actually gave me, which I still have, this Harmony acoustic guitar, 1975 guitar. And I just wrote the chords just kind of like made sense. It wasn't like, like a lot of songs I write now, the chord structures don't really change, but the melodies and lyrics do. And for me, it's all about the concept and the lyric these days, where back then it was just like whatever worked. It was like a wild west of songwriting for me because I just didn't understand it. And
right.
I stumbled upon it, which is great.
And there's a beauty to that. And that's what, after I heard that song 24 years ago now, Here in Your Bedroom. And all these years, I never realized that you started the song in E and that you went back to E for the second verse. It sounded like you went to another key to me all these years until I picked up the guitar today and I had that aha moment. I'm like, that's fucking cool, man. And that's kind of like later today, I want to write a song and I'm going to steal from your playbook there, John. It's really awesome.
Yeah, do it.
So at this point, besides Goldfinger, no disrespect, but you don't really have a track record as a producer. So how'd you land that gig?
I figured if I'm going to do this, I'm going to become a legit engineer. I want to learn how to do all of it. And so at that point, I had already made, I had dabbled with that TSS band. I'd made Goldfinger's first 2 albums. And then I'd been in the studio with Tommy Lee, kind of, messing around with the Love Hogs. So I had a bit of knowledge, but I really like, I mean, I rented every piece of gear I'd ever wanted to rent. And I just basically made this demo of 3 songs that sounded pretty cool for a guy that didn't really know what he was doing. And then I had my manager, John Reese, who we all know and love. You know, he
Sure.
managed Goldfinger and managed me. I mean, he managed Goldfinger. I wasn't a producer at the time, but I told him, I said, dude, I want to start doing other stuff. And so he was friends with Guy Oseary, sent him the demo tape, and you know, John's the greatest salesman of all time, and he basically sold me to Guy Oseary, who signed Show Off to Maverick Records, which was Madonna's label. And so we had a budget, and then we made that album. So, but it was me like taking the initiative to fly them out, do the work, and prove. I had to prove it. And I took a bunch of photos. I think I asked a favor of Lisa Johnson, who we love, and she took some photos of the band. And I made a little. I think I had a little, Super 8 video camera and made like a little makeshift video. And so I presented the video, the photos, and the story, and the 3-song demo to Maverick, and that's how they got signed.
That's awesome, man. So from Show Off, of course, you did Mest, you did The Used early on, which were breakout records for all those bands. Of course, Good Charlotte, Story of the Year. Looking at the list here, Panic at the Disco, All Time Low, Blink 182. You've been doing their recent projects. You've just at the top of the show, I said world renowned producer. That's what you've become. What if you were, and I know you already gave me your proudest moment was pulling off the side of the road there when you heard Here in Your Bedroom on K-Rock, but production of a record that you worked on outside of Goldfinger. What's your proudest moment there?
The Taste of Ink with The Used, probably, because
I love that song. God, so good.
It is really a great song, and I didn't have anything to do with the writing of that song. All I did, I mean, I produced The Used, which basically means that I kind of helped shape their sound. I got all their tones. I figured out how to sample drums, because we had to record that song in this little teeny room in Marina Del Rey where I lived at the time, and it was like I made the most out of it. I learned how to run Pro Tools during that album. Like I really cut my teeth, and that was going from, I think, a pretty average producer, producing. I mean, Mest was great, but Mest wasn't like a big stretch between Goldfinger and Mest. I mean, they were very stylistically the same, pop punk band, and then The Used were so different, and I knew that we had to experiment sonically with a bunch of different sounds. And Bert, there's no one I'd ever met like Bert, and I'd never seen a performer like that guy. And so The Taste of Ink was a song that they had written the verse to. They had this like really great verse, but then it just went from a verse to some chords and then to another verse. And so I pushed and pushed and pushed until they wrote that chorus of "Here I am." Yeah, alive at last. That whole section, like they wrote in my living room in Marina Del Rey, and I pushed and pushed to kind of like help make the song a better song. And I think without me, and that's I know my value is I know without me and without them it wouldn't have happened. Both of us needed each other, but
Right.
I really feel like that was the moment that I became the producer that I am today, where I took the initiative and I said, I asserted myself in this situation, knowing I'm not in the band, knowing I'm just an outsider looking in, trying to help this band become the biggest band in the world, which is what they said they wanted to be. And I helped push them to make that song one of the greatest songs of that genre.
Oh, that song's just, it defines the 2000s. It's one of my favorite, probably all-time songs. If I was to have a top list of 50, it's in there. I love that song. I love that band. John, I want to thank you so much. Lastly, I'd like you to take this moment to plug anything just for yourself, for Goldfinger, stuff you're producing, working on. Tell the world what's going on with you.
Well, I mean, like everybody these days, I've been stuck in the studio. I'm not playing a lot of shows out live right now, and I've been just working on. I've been doing all sorts of stuff. I've been doing tracks for this guy, Lil Pump. I'm working with this girl, Rico Nasty, this rapper. She's amazing, and I have a record label called Big Noise, which I started with John Cohen. John Cohen started Vagrant Records. He signed in 1975, and Edward Sharp. He's just a legend. So him and I have this label with this guy Nick Gross together. Nick Gross is I think you know Nick. He's playing drums in Goldfinger these days, and so we signed this kid, Arrested Youth. He's like a alternative rapper, really, really good dude. And so I've been working on that. I'm making a new Goldfinger album, and I'm just staying in the studio busy.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, can't wait to cross paths in the live sector again with you, or at this point with anybody. I think everyone's dying to get back out there.
I know, man. I know. Yeah. I can't wait.
Yeah, well, thank you. You are a busy man. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me, and I wish you nothing but the best.
Yeah, you too, Chris. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, gang, a very special thanks to this week's guest, Mr. John Feldmann, and to all of you listening who have already subscribed to Chris DeMakes A Podcast. Your feedback has been tremendous thus far. I really appreciate it. A couple things before I wrap up here. I'd love to write you your very own custom song. That's right. I'll write you a song or one for that special someone in your life, a jingle or voiceover for your business or podcast, and anything else you can think of when it comes to a one-of-a-kind custom song. In addition, I'm now doing live, one-on-one video consultations, song collaborations, co-writes, production, questions regarding the music business, and everything in between. For more info on all of the above, please check out chrisdemakes.com or email me at chrisdemakes@gmail.com. I can also be found on Facebook at Chris DeMakes Official, on Twitter at Less Than Chris, and Instagram at Less Than Chris D. All right, be good to each other. Until next time.